what it looks like when your avoidant ex finally breaks. Let's talk about something we don't always see coming. The moment the person who ran finally stops running. Because here's the truth, and avoidants aren't heartless. They're just scared. They fear intimacy because it threatens the independence that keeps them emotionally safe. But what happens when they break? When the walls they've built start to crack, maybe you've moved on, maybe you're just trying to breathe in after again all the mixed signals, the silence, the confusion, and then they come back, not with flowers and a movie script apology. No, that's not their style. They come back awkwardly, clumsily, as if they're not even sure why they're back, but you know why they're breaking. And it looks like this: they reach out at odd times, not to win you back, but to see if the door is still open. They'll ask how you are, comment on something they never noticed before, maybe bring up an inside joke from months ago. It's their way of saying, "I miss you," without saying it. You'll notice the fear in their eyes, but also something new, vulnerability, because the thing they were running from, intimacy, is now the thing they crave, and that scares them more than losing you ever did. But here's where you have to be strong, because this isn't just about them breaking, it's about you rising. So when your avoidant ex finally breaks, and they will, if the connection was real, don't get lost in the moment. Watch their actions, not their apologies. Don't mistake pain for change. And remember, it's not your job to fix someone who's only just realized they're broken. If you choose to open the door again, do it not from hope, but from strength. Because love isn't about waiting for someone to come back. It's about choosing someone who shows up from the start. Avoidants often get misunderstood. It's easy to look at someone who pulls away when things get serious and assume they don't care, that they're cold, emotionally unavailable, or just not that into you. But the truth is, many avoidants deeply crave connection. They just fear what intimacy represents. It's not love they're avoiding, it's vulnerability. The closer someone gets, the more exposed they feel, and that exposure triggers an old belief. If someone sees all of me, they might not stay. This fear comes from early experiences where closeness didn't feel safe or consistent. Maybe affection was conditional, or being vulnerable led to disappointment or rejection. So over time, avoidants learn to associate love with risk. Real intimacy becomes a threat, not a comfort. To protect themselves, they pull back the moment emotional stakes get high. It's a defense mechanism, not a declaration of apathy. Here's what's confusing in the early stages. Avoidants often appear incredibly present. They can be charming, curious, and even intense in their pursuit. But once emotional dependence starts to form, once they feel themselves needing you, panic sets in. They start questioning the relationship, overanalyzing small things, finding flaws, or withdrawing altogether. This isn't about you doing something wrong. It's about them trying to regulate the growing discomfort inside of them. Intimacy makes them feel like they're losing control, and control is how they stay safe. That's why they might suddenly become distant after what felt like an amazing weekend together, why they ghost after talking about the future, why they say they need space. When you start to get emotionally closer, you'll start to feel the push and pull, the longing when they're distant, the relief when they're back, and the confusion of wondering what changed when everything seemed to be going well. What's important to understand is that these behaviors don't necessarily reflect how much they feel for you. In fact, the stronger the feelings, the more likely they are to panic. The irony is they might actually care deeply, but that care feels dangerous to them. Being close to someone brings up all the buried fears they've worked so hard to avoid. So rather than confronting those fears, they escape them, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much and don't know how to process it. And that's why assuming your avoidant ex never cared can be a trap. They likely did. They may still. But feelings alone aren't enough. Until someone is willing to confront their fear of intimacy, they will always sabotage the very connection they crave. Understanding that can give you peace. It wasn't that you weren't enough. It's that being seen and known triggered something in them that had nothing to do with you. Their avoidance wasn't a lack of affection. It was a fear of losing themselves in a closeness they were never taught how to trust. When an avoidant ex starts to break down emotionally and attempts to re-enter your life, it usually doesn't come with grand gestures or dramatic apologies. Instead, their approach is subtle, cautious, and often confusing. They don't come back saying, "I realize I made a mistake, and I want to fix this." More often, it's a late-night message, a vague comment on your social media, or a random question about something insignificant, something you both know they could easily Googled. These small, seemingly insignificant actions are not about the topic at hand. They're a test, a check-in, a way to see if the door is still slightly open. Avoidants don't return in emotionally articulate ways because doing so would require them to fully confront their own vulnerability. They aren't used to leaning into discomfort. They're used to pulling away from it. So when they begin to feel the loss, when your silence grows louder than their comfort zone, They don't come back all at once. They edge back into your life slowly, often without clarity, because clarity would mean commitment, and commitment is what terrifies them. You might notice these attempts through inconsistent communication. One day, they might send you a message with real emotion behind it, maybe something reflective, nostalgic, or vulnerable. The next, they vanish again. This hot and cold behavior isn't about manipulation. It's about internal conflict. They want to connect, but don't feel safe doing it. They miss you, but they don't yet know how to be different. So they test the waters with breadcrumb communication, unsure whether they're ready to fully show up, yet terrified of losing you entirely. They may bring up a shared memory out of nowhere. Something like, remember that road we took the coast? Or I was just thinking about that song you used to play all the time. It seems random, but it's intentional. They're anchoring themselves to something safe, something that once felt good between you. It's their way of saying, I still think about us, without saying it directly. Why? Because directness makes feel exposed, and exposure is their greatest fear. These subtle efforts are often frustrating if you've done the hard work of healing. It can feel like emotional whiplash. You might wonder if they're just being friendly, or if there's something more. The key is not to get lost in trying to interpret every message. Instead, watch for consistency. Are they showing up with presence or just dipping in and out of your life when it suits their comfort? The truth is, when an avoidant ex starts to break, their first instinct is not to rebuild the relationship. It's to soothe their discomfort. Reaching out to you may be more about there for reassurance than a genuine readiness to reconnect in a healthy way. They're searching for familiarity in the face of emotional turmoil, but they're still unsure how to do it responsibly. So their outreach is rarely about resolution. It's about regulation. And unless they've done the inner work, their way of coming back will likely reflect the same avoidant patterns that caused the breakup in the first place. When an avoidant ex begins to reappear in your life after a period of distance or silence, it can be easy to assume that their pain means they've changed. Maybe they look tired, or they open up more than they used to. They might even express regret, admitting that they miss you or they didn't handle things the right way. In that moment, it's tempting to believe that this emotional display is proof of transformation, that the hurt they feel has opened their eyes and made them ready to be the person you needed all along. But emotional pain isn't the same as emotional growth. Avoidant individuals often carry a great deal of internal tension. When they end a relationship, especially one with emotional depth, they may initially feel relief. They've returned to their comfort zone of independence and emotional distance. But over time, that relief can shift into loneliness, regret, and a strange kind of grief. They start to remember the warmth, the connection, the moments of genuine closeness, and it stirs something inside of them. That stirring, however, is not this healing, it's discomfort, not resolution. Their return, then, is often driven by that discomfort. It's not always a conscious desire to reconcile in a healthy way, but rather a desire to escape the emotional weight they're suddenly carrying. And so they come back not necessarily ready to rebuild something new, but to feel better. They want to reconnect with the person who made them feel safe and seen, but without fully understanding or taking responsibility for why the relationship broke in the first place. This is why their words, though sincere in the moment, don't always translate into lasting change. They might say they miss you, that they've been thinking about you, or even that they made a mistake, and part of them truly means it. But unless they've done the internal work to confront their avoidant patterns, they're still the same person who couldn't tolerate emotional intimacy, that hasn't shifted just because they feel pain. Pain can be a powerful motivator for reflection, but it's not the same as transformation. Real change requires conscious effort, learning how to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, choosing vulnerability even when it feels unsafe, and actively building new habits around communication and emotional availability. That kind of growth doesn't happen in a few weeks or because someone had a moment of sadness. It happens through intention practice and often professional help. So when your avoidant ex shows up looking softer, more emotional, or regretful, don't immediately assume they've changed. Instead ask, are they taking ownership? Are they showing up differently in their behavior, not just their words? Do they have a plan for how they're going to do things differently this time? Or are they simply seeking relief from their own emotional discomfort? The way they feel about losing you isn't the same as being ready to build something healthier. This isn't about you not. Change isn't in their heartbreak. It's in their consistent, intentional actions moving forward. When an avoidant ex resurfaces, especially during a moment of emotional vulnerability, it's natural to feel a wave of hope. Their return might awaken old feelings, stir memories of good times, and make you question whether this is your second chance. But in these moments, staying grounded in your own strength is not just important. It's essential. Because if you're not anchored in self-worth, clarity, and emotional stability, it becomes too easy to fall back into the same patterns that once hurt you. Avoidant partners often create emotional confusion. Their withdrawal teaches you to second-guess yourself. Their inconsistency trains you to look for breadcrumbs instead of real nourishment. Over time, you begin to normalize the waiting, the wondering, the feeling of being not quite chosen. So when they come back, even in a fragile or broken state, it's easy to slip into the role you once played, the fixer, the empath, the one who loves enough for both of you. You may tell yourself that this time could be different, that your love might finally be enough to heal them. But that is not strength. That's self-sacrifice disguised as hope. Strength means being able to acknowledge the depth of your feelings without letting them dictate your decisions. It's recognizing that you can miss someone, care for them, even understand their pain, and still choose not to let them back into your life until they show real, consistent growth. It's being able to say, I see you hurting, but I won't abandon myself to help you feel better. Often when avoidant exes return, they're still uncertain. They might feel the loss, but they haven't built the tools to handle emotional closeness any better than before. And if you're not standing strong in your boundaries, you risk stepping back into a dynamic that leaves you emotionally drained. The pattern might feel familiar, even comforting in its own way, but it will always leave you stuck in a cycle of giving too much and receiving too little. This is why your own healing is so critical. You need to have done enough inner work to recognize what you truly deserve: consistency, presence, respect, and emotional safety. From that place, you can listen to what your ex is saying without getting swept up in fantasy. You can ask yourself, is this person capable of meeting me where I am now? And answer honestly, without trying to twist the truth to fit what you hope is possible. Your strength shows up in the quiet decisions, in the way you don't rush to reply when they reach out, in the way you no longer need to chase clarity from someone who was always vague, in the way you protect your peace above all else. Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether they come back. It's about whether they deserve a place in the life you've built since they left. Staying grounded in your strength is the only way to ensure you don't trade your growth for someone else's confusion. It's a powerful realization when you finally understand that love isn't just about how much someone says they care, it's about how consistently they show up. You can spend months, even years, waiting for someone to come back around, hoping that time and distance will create the clarity they never seemed to have when they were with you. And when they finally do come back, it can feel like validation. But there's a hard truth we don't talk about enough. Showing up eventually is not the same as showing up willingly, and it's certainly not the same as showing up right. Choosing someone who only realizes your value after losing you is a dangerous game, because what they're often reacting to isn't just you, it's the absence of you. It's the loneliness, the guilt, the discomfort of having to sit with what they pushed away. And while that discomfort might lead to genuine reflection, it doesn't guarantee change. In fact, some people only come back to feel better, to be reassured that they're still wanted, or to relieve the shame they feel, not because they're ready to meet you at the level you now require. There's a big difference between someone who chooses you from the beginning and someone who chooses you only after they've exhausted every other option or finally confronted their emotional limitations. The former makes you feel safe, seen, and valued. The latter often makes you feel like a backup plan, even if they don't intend to. When someone truly values you, they don't risk losing you before deciding you're worth the effort. They don't need absence to make them appreciate presence. A person who shows up willingly shows you through their actions that they are emotionally available. They communicate. They follow through. They're not perfect, but they're present. They're open to the vulnerability required for real connection. They invest in building trust rather than testing your limits. And most importantly, they don't leave you guessing. When your avoidant ex returns, it's essential to ask yourself if they are choosing you with intention or reacting from fear. Are they stepping back into your life because they've grown, or because it hurts to be without you? Are they committed to doing the hard work, or are they hoping that nostalgia and emotion will be enough? The standard can't be whether someone misses you. It has to be whether they're ready and willing to show up in the way you need from day one. Anything less is settling for potential over reality. And potential doesn't build healthy relationships. Commitment does. Effort does. Presence does. Choosing someone who shows up willingly isn't about punishing those who took too long to realize your worth. It's about protecting your heart and honoring the love you have to give. Because you deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to understand your value. You deserve someone who sees it clearly and acts on it before it's too late. Thank you for giving me your time, your heart, and your trust today. I hope something in these words reminded you of your power, your worth, and the future you deserve. Take care of your heart, protect your peace, and remember the right person won't just come back, they'll come correct. Goodbye for now, and thank you so much for listening. Stay strong, stay open, and always choose yourself first. Thank you.